Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Destiny Movie Night Hangout. I'm your host here, and my special guest today is Marlon. Hi, Marlon.
Hey, Mike. Hi,
And,
everyone.
and the movie topic discussion for today is The Witch. Let's just jump right into an overview. I'm going to ask Marlon to introduce the movie for us.
Yeah, surely. This is Robert Eggers' first movie. I'd like to say that this is probably the best movie that I've watched the whole year. So I watched it twice. I became quite a fan of it. And actually, the story takes place in the 1600s, and it's about a family that arrives from England to New England in the US, Puritans that for one reason or another get expelled from their community where everyone was living together. And the father goes into a situation of a family, goes into a situation where he decides that he doesn't want to be there any longer and just leaves that colonial plantation to go to a remote area that is next to the woods where the whole movie essentially takes place. And it is called a witch because it is supposed that there is a witch in the woods that, first of all, the whole story revolves around an initial situation where one of the kids, one of the five kids, the baby, gets stolen supposedly by the witch. And that kind of unleashes a series of events of hysteria, religious hysteria, paranoia, which we will be focusing on, not so much from the perspective of, oh, the witch and paranormal and the devil and Satanism in people have discussed this movie about, but plainly we will be focusing on the human mind, which is actually the star of the movie, the emotions, the paranoia, how all of the evil is projected or reflected outside of ourselves as the evil, the bad goat, the witch, and we don't dare to face these points within ourselves, or we try to keep everything suppressed and nice and clean as this family, Puritans, the couple, the father, the mother with the four kids, well, five kids, then four because the one gets stolen, and how the relationships essentially unravel to a point where everyone ends up dying. So I'd like to say, yes, this is a spoiler alert because we will be discussing about that kind of stuff. But what I found so interesting is that, to me, this was like a really great movie in the sense of this human representation and how it is more like a psychological thriller, not so much a horror movie. For example, Mike, can you also share your experience with it?
Yeah, like I was mentioning to you earlier, my initial experience towards the movie was like, what the hell is this? Like, why did why did someone go to the trouble to make a movie about this? Um, and I would say, in investigating that point more so, that's, my default programming preference with regards to a movie is having, some sort of inspiring, positive story of triumphs through adversity. Like it could be a drama, it could be all sorts of things, but there has to be some sort of triumph in it. And this movie totally did not do that at all. It was the complete opposite of that. So in a lot of ways, for me, it was pretty cool because, I got to see how I just even created a limitation within my own movie viewing experience where, I kind of want the story to go a certain way. Like I have a preference in my wants, and if, I don't get what I want, kind of childish in a way where it's kind of like, well, I'm going to have a temper tantrum maybe a little bit, or kind of be confused. I was a little bit confused, to be fair, in watching through it because it's like I wasn't getting it. Like I was seeing these points, but I wasn't appreciating all the dimensions that were unfolding there as cool points to talk about and bring up because it wasn't fitting, my fantasy world so much so.
I find it so relevant also to share this with everyone because I've read many reviews and stuff like that from people saying, oh, this is just some trash movie. It's so boring and so lame. And I was like, But now I understand it. So thanks for sharing that, because I understand then how there is this predisposition to watch movies like these, which is, yes, slow. If you watch things like Tarkovsky or Kubrick, it's something like that, you know, where it takes time to develop, and but the intricacies at a psychological level build up really well to the point where we can kind of get frightened, horrified, if anything else, by what we can create at a mind level. And I also like to say that for everyone that is like catching up with the process here in Desteni, interviews in Eqafe as well, there's this opening of this dark self, the essentially everything that we have defined as evil, bad, negative, that we don't want to look at, that we prefer, as you were saying, just look at the positive, have a good time, and don't want to open up and actually dig out everything that is supportive for ourselves. That implies our dark mind, dark secrets, secret mind, all of the things that we know exist as part of us. And that if we don't dare to embrace it and to open it up and to recognize it, it becomes like this sort of baggage that still defines us. We are defined towards it as fear, as evading it, avoiding it, yet we cannot change it because we are not one and equal with it, as it is usually explained. So if anything, this movie, even if it's set in the 1600s, and one can say like, oh, what does that have to do, witches, with today's life? But no, actually, it can show precisely how in the unit of society, which is this family, can unravel, fall apart into a tragedy if precisely this dark self, this evil in oneself, is not dealt with and is constantly suppressed with things like, in their case, religion. We can see very much all of this religious hysteria that is created upon the baby being stolen by the witch, and how everyone starts pondering, like, why did this happen? Oh, we shouldn't have left the original community or plantation. They start blaming one of the kids in the family, the oldest one, become a witch. And this kind of paranoia starts building up to a point where, yes, they kind of end up being possessed. You can call it mind possessed or genuinely possessed, which did happen in that time. I mean, there is also the whole series about demons and how all of that happened on Eqafe. We can leave links and all of that. But here we can look at it as a mind possession, and how upon trying to keep it cool and keep this nice face all the time, and I'm doing well, I don't face any problems, that leads the family to break apart and to get to a point where, just as one suppresses a lot of fear and emotions and what we call backchat, as all the voices in the head that we don't deal with, we eventually just in a moment can erupt, and yeah, you can go and, of killing someone, you can direct yourself to do it because we are doing it to ourselves and we are not seeing things through common sense. So that is represented very well in the movie.
I very much agree with you on that. Before we continue, I just want to let the viewers know we have a Q&A app that's set up through the YouTube channel that the viewers are watching it. So you're able to just write in comments or questions, and we'll be able to see them, and we can engage them if and as any come up. In keeping with what you're saying there, Marlon, a point that came up for me right away, and when watching the movie, seeing was the family construct, and just how integrated the point, so much so, of war within the family exists. And somebody said one time, I think it was Bernard, saying like, look at why there's so much war in the world. It's like, look at how much war exists within the family, and the ones that you live in very close relationship to, there exists such turmoil. It's like, how can you expect the entirety of the world to be a balanced equilibrium when the ones that you're apparently supposed to love the most, well, which we know is a construct in and of itself, there's this real lack of trust, and that really is what perpetuates the war. And so this movie does a real good job of showcasing that, where, you know, there's so much doubt, which is glossed with the paranoia, and there's a real lack of trust for, you know, different members of the family at particular times, as there's various relationship interplays that happen where, you know, we see just basically this riff happening, and then it just compounds, and it leads us into another great trauma.
Yeah, it's cool that you mentioned the self-trust point. I hadn't identified it as such, but it is so. The moment that the parents can believe that their oldest child or young lady has become a witch and has signed a deal with the devil, and prefer to trust their own beliefs and religious indoctrination too, instead, you know, having communication with the child and so forth, that already points out to what extent, yes, we have completely abdicated our basic responsibility of, in this case, parenting and communicating with the children to what God says, or the religion, which some people might say nowadays, well, I don't believe in God, religion is a thing of the past. But do you believe that the universe is giving you stuff, or that you have some kind of spiritual force or guide or whatever? All of these entities, even if you call it God or creation or whatever, dedicate our responsibility to every single decision and action that we do or don't do in our lives to these entities. That is still a religious construct. And I mean, I can definitely speak for myself. I've been there, done that for a long part of my life. And it takes time and even a bit of a leap of, say, to dive into deconstructing this, because yes, it's removing the idea that there's this something or someone guiding you and taking care of you, and that is the sole responsible for the creation of the world. And when you find out that that is not so, that we are really the creators of ourselves, and that we are responsible for everything that is here, then one kind of doesn't like the outcome or the result of that. See that a lot can be attributed to the witch, the possession, the evil goat, this kind of things that are a bit paranormal or beyond normal, but we can really boil it down to paranoia, to religious beliefs, and essentially mind creations. So one very interesting aspect that was also opened up in one of the recent interviews of Future of Consciousness, precisely called The Dark Self, is how we have to be very aware of what we create, that we then impose into physical reality, to alter it, to change it, to essentially define it, sometimes with irreversible consequences, just because of something that we thought, that we felt, and we didn't deal with. We're talking about very present things. I mean, if you read the, you know, sites like the Daily Mail in the UK, you can see a bunch of news that are as shocking as what happens in that movie. Maybe not with the same myth of the witch and this and that, but, you know, parents killing their children. And it's things that really break your heart, and that one tends to see and like, oh, how can this happen in humanity? I'm not part of them. Those are the bad guys. I'm not. We are all equal in that. If one single thought has ever gone through one's head of, I want to kill that person, or I just hate them so much, we are part of it. And so that's why I found it so relevant that even to checking our own reactions to what went on in the movie doesn't matter nowadays. To check, you know, am I completely wanting to avoid seeing that as my own reflection, as myself, as me being also a human being that has also that human mind that causes these problems? And yes, it is our reality very much. And this movie, if anything, also shows how there hasn't been really an evolution. If from the 1600s and even beyond that, to now, we see the same problems, just with different stages, different outfits, different religions, but still the same constructs. So very much is quite a present situation to deal with. And in terms of family, I fully agree that it's when we look at this process and how we become human beings, the relationship with your parents, the relationship that your parents have, the relationship with your siblings will define the rest of your life. So imagine how we are doing in the world if we have, the society that we have right now, where parents don't really know how to be the best parents that they can be. We don't understand our mind. We see everything as a problem instead of realizing that a problem is just something that we don't understand yet, and that we have to kind of get the tools to understand it, which is also why Desteni process exists. And you know what? I probably would be sunk in some kind of metaphysical belief, similar to the witch or be a Satanist for that matter, maybe, who knows, if I hadn't discovered Desteni. I was telling you before the Hangout that I was more in that I would enjoy depression and the dark side more than something that is very positive and lively. But it's not about that. It's really about like understanding both sides and creating an equilibrium to then decide who do I really want to be in my life, and how can I become the best person that I can.
For sure, Marlon. I totally relate with that, specifically in coming into Desteni and how it has like aided my life in so many awesome ways. Specifically in relation to my family. I could have been, I very much can be regarded as the black sheep of the family, so much so. And, so I would react quite easily, and, I would bully and I would pick fights and basically just go into my reactions quite extensively and feel very self-righteous and justified to do so because it was coming up within me, and it's my reaction, my feeling, or my thought, and just spew that out there without really slowing myself down at all to ask myself what's going on here. Like, am I able to just take a breath, take a moment, slow down? Like, can I do that, or do I have to just run with this energy that's coming up within me? Like, can I actually take the time to identify specific words with the feelings and the emotions and go through it, and even more so forgive myself for the experience that's coming up within me, and not take it so personally that I'm bound to it or I'm victimized within what I'm seeing, because it could be regarded as dark or not good or bad behavior. And so it's not to, when you see things about yourself that you realize or identify that aren't cool, to go into this sort of flip-flop personality where now you're, the victim of your own circumstance, so much so. And just the same as it's not cool to, go into the self-righteous character as well, where you're just at a different point in the flux of character personification.
Absolutely. We become the characters of our own, essentially, minds, because if we feel something for an extended period of time, anyone watching has probably been in a situation in their lives where they think something so much and you go and actually do it. Or maybe you stopped yourself from doing something really consequential for 1 second where you realize, oh shit, what am I getting myself into? So this is something very common to ourselves, and we can define them as a mind possession, in fact, because through understanding also how the mind operates and how all of our emotions and feelings contain energy that we consume from our physical body, in fact, to be powering up our power trips as well. We are the creators of that, and we can prevent it as well. So if anything, I like seeing this movie so much so as entertainment, yeah, a really great piece in from my perspective, but also as a cautionary tale. Maybe extrapolated, gotten to the extreme, but it can happen to one degree or another in every single family. Whenever things are not spoken through, communicated through, when there's not someone that is completely stable in common sense, it can lead families to destroy each other.
Absolutely.
What is a passional crime in a relationship but that as well? You see the parents killing their babies, all of these things really happens. And that can be prevented, sorted out, if we dare, as you were mentioning, the ugly, the dark, the evil, the things we don't like to accept. Hey, if it's in my mind, it's a part of me. It's not like someone came and implanted you this mind and now you're this evil dude. No. Mind, as also is explained throughout the whole Destiny material, is like a systematized version of the good and the bad that exists in our beingness, like the real us. Yet, because the mind had to feed more into the friction and conflict, it's mostly the negative that we see in our minds. But it doesn't mean that we are evil in nature either. I mean, we all have this potential of being like the, let's call it, the constructive version of ourselves with a purpose to support ourselves, others in life. And then there's more like the self-interested, self-destructive style that we could choose. And this is actually something that Thomasin, the young lady that eventually at the end of the movie, sorry for the spoiler, with the devil and becomes a witch, she had these kind of desires. She kind of points out that she would like to be the witch, and she would like to, either for boredom or for the sake of getting into an alternate reality based on the restrictive family that she was living in, she starts flirting with this idea of, I want to, I'm the witch, and yes, I signed a deal with the devil. And she kind of ends up fulfilling her own prophecy, because once that she sees her whole family gone, dead essentially, she decides to go and sign the deal with the devil, which is where she's tempted with all of these things that she was desiring, like at that time the taste of butter, or having these nice clothes, or traveling the world, having this sort of freedom. So she signs up for it, and not realizing what she was getting herself into. Of course, in the movie, you don't get much of that part of when she becomes a witch, except for some fantasy-like part, which I really don't want to dive into because I don't see it as that relevant. But just to ourselves, that point of temptation, what leads us to, and this is not in the religious sense of, oh, I'm sinning. No, but temptation in the sense of, what are we doing that we know in our lives is not supportive, that we know is keeping us in some kind of grudge or sadness or depression or hatred, or even a power trip, wanting to get something for the sake of some kind of personal high, a better experience of yourself that you try and keep and compete and fight, and anything that takes that amount of effort to keep up with in a personal interest, in the sense of creating an energy and experience about it, has to be questioned, because ultimately we have to always ponder, okay, what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? Is this beneficial for me, my body, my life, that of others? Or is this just something that I am giving into as a form of indulgence as well? What do you say about that?
There's some very interesting points you bring up, Marlon. One that I'd like to address is with regards to the point of temptation, and how really that reflects back to our mind relationship within ourselves, so much so, and how the war within the family, the inner conflict within ourselves comes out in our relationship with others, so much so, because in a way, there's that movement that's already there. We're triggered, we react in a moment here. And so there's the temptation to just go with it. And it's kind of like the easy way out in so many senses, because, it's right there, you're feeling it, you're kind of just, not totally centered within yourself. And so we kind of justify that in so many instances as like, wow, here I go, or, spiral out in whatever particular instance. And then what comes up is, the excuse, the justification, the blame, the reasoning is how we self-fulfill our own prophecy into fulfilling our desire for temptation, so much so. So it, temptation in taking the point of investigating your own mind is very much always here with ourselves, because when one actually engages oneself to investigate the dynamics of one's own mind, your temptations will come up all the time as your points, your trigger points. So in a lot of ways, temptation, with recognizing the word temptation, that can be a cool stepping stone of support to see where you are naturally inclined to go on the path of least resistance. Because in stopping ourselves within a point of energy reaction is a point of courage and great strength, because it's full of resistance, because due to the way we've conditioned ourselves within our own thinking, stopping what we're doing is not within our conditioned thinking behavior at all. So that's going to be the path of most resistance initially, until we, develop our basically stamina, endurance, and taking on points about ourselves and developing the structure with the tools that we've learned with Desteni, for instance, and how to work through these points effectively and open up deeper and deeper layers within ourselves.
Yeah, because in that sense, if we look at the example of the mother of the family, and we look at how in her whole life was devoted to this God or Jesus or whatever, in the religious construct that they're part of, what could have been, she was aware of, say, the Desteni tools, or aware of how her mind works, she wouldn't be delegating her whole experience to just praying to a God that it stops, but she would be communicating more with the children and her husband and asking for clear communications. The whole stealing of that silver cup for money would have been opened up and understood instead of held up as a grudge. The whole notion of the becoming a witch would have been placed just out of question, because they're living with her, they know what her life is about, and if there's something that the girl is getting into, then communicating with her, not taking it personal. But no, instead what happened is the reverse of that. Everything was kept in the mind to the point where she gets possessed and starts blaming her own child of being the witch, to the point of wanting to kill her. So what happens? The child has to defend herself, so she kills the mother. It's really tragic. Yes, it's a dramatic movie, not happy ending, if you will. But this is also to show to what extent we have the ability to decide how to live our lives in a more supportive manner. And that is, something that we all can do through knowing how to do it. And what happens when we abdicate that possibility, that creative process, to a God, to a secret, to keeping it suppressed within ourselves, to pretending that everything is fine, it can drive someone crazy. I mean, if you look at the problems that we're facing in terms of social health, mental problems are escalating. Not only due to the stress and the pressures of surviving in the world, which is also represented in the movie as well. Part of why the father feels so bad with himself is because he took the whole family out of that plantation, a place where they had something to eat, into a place where they could not grow anything. So they start going a little bit hungry, which is also another dimension. Now that I see it, what happens to people that we deem as crazy, lunatic, homeless people. When you don't have proper nutrition, you really don't have the proper functioning in your mind as well. So they start rationalizing a piece of bread in between everyone and considering it's like 6 of them. It's already quite a very restrictive type of lifestyle. Yet he decided to do that more from a point of ego, of arrogance. And that's what he faces. I mean, in the end, he kind of loses his mind as well and ends up dying in a tragic way. So it's interesting how every character kind of faces their own demons, so to speak. The same with the child, that Caleb, son, that gets tempted by his awakening of sexuality, something very normal for a guy in puberty, 12-year-old guy or something like that, gets lured by the super beautiful witch and then gets possessed and all of that. But if we look at the essence of that event, that's what happens with children, for example, currently now awakening to pornography and things like that, and don't know how to deal with it and become addicted and so kind of possessed by it. What would you say?
Totally. And it really, Well, with the child and coming into puberty, it kind of showcases a point of communication on sensitive topics that are a natural point of maturation, and how, like the child may not be able to clearly articulate these points, but it's a point that somebody who's older is very familiar with, because everybody walks through this biological process, which kind of showcases again the importance on the parent to be that big brother big sister kind of role, where it's they're a guide, like kind of, I know what you're going to be going through. You might not necessarily recognize when it's first happening, but to educate them about it so they're familiar about it, so that it's a no big deal point, in the sense that the communication channels are open. You've introduced, like, the new specific vocabulary, the terms that they can correlate with the sensations and the feelings and the thoughts and all those points. So it doesn't become this like secret point that the child has to bear alone or feels uncomfortable talking about, because there's been no mention of such things and whatnot. And it's it's kind of like this thing you take on alone, which totally relates, I see, to just like the different characters we so often take on in various relationships. So like in this movie, a good example of specific character roles a person takes on and becomes very much a part of their life is the role of being a mother or being a father, where we see very clearly within both the mother and the father of this movie that they have this added stress and pressure on them because of their role. So much so, like you spoke about the father with the male ego essentially, and the points of pride and not wanting to basically consider other options, because that would mean backtracking, which is so much so the exact process in working through the dimensions of our mind, and that we have to go backwards to get to the roots of the point, and it's a matter of slowing down and going back to the beginning. And then also to look at the mother point there, and you can relate this to any character role. You could say, like, the person you are, the character you have to play when you go to work in a particular job or whatnot, that even though, yes, you are this character, that's not all you are. And you don't have to be burdened within the experience of taking on responsibility, where yes, responsibility can be regarded as work and a chore, but it can also become like a great expression and real point of extension of your self development, and a real sharing and a real joy in so many ways, as you live the work that you do. And I think that really stems from allowing ourselves to be vulnerable within and as the work that we do, so much so that we are human. Points do come up within ourselves, that we don't have to put up this shield or this presentation that all is always perfect with us, or that there might be something come up that we have a question about, or would like to ask for assistance upon, and just really, like, allow ourselves to be self-honest with who we are, what's coming up, and not try to keep it all secretive, but to walk the process all here together. It's like, yes, each of us is responsible for what goes on within ourselves, and part of that is in allowing ourselves to share with one another and have open dialogue, so we can communicate support effectively to one another, and thus we can receive the best gifts from one another by like sharing and being vulnerable with each other in a way that's great.
And asking for help, that's a very important point, in due time, because it's much more difficult to, be assisted, get assistance, support yourself once that you've allowed the point to escalate to where, your own mind and the voices in the head, just to take an example, can become its own AI, where you believe that it is really you and that you have to obey and that you're going to act upon whatever you're feeling in your mind. But it's something that takes place over decades, for example. Like, that will take time to correct, but it's not impossible either.
For
Though, yeah, the vulnerability point is so relevant here, because we definitely see that construct of, you know, we're fine, and even if they're like hungry and sad and mad and all of that, you see these very stoic scenes where the family is apparently all good while everyone is facing their own shit inside. So this is once again going back to the point of how through a particular religious mindset, which now can become nowadays, let's say, a positivity mindset where all is fine, you know, I don't struggle, everyone is happy. If we stay in that, we won't get anywhere if we really want to evolve as humanity. And that's why I think that it's a good idea that this kind of drama is placed as a somewhat dark movie, so-called horror movie, so we can face it now, or people that haven't watched it that can look at it now with this perspective in mind and see that this is something that exists in our minds to one extent or another. We are the ones that decide how far we take it through, whether we either support ourselves to stop it, prevent it, work with it, kind of eat our ego, work through it, get out of the, as you were mentioning, the character of the father, the mother, the son, daughter, whatever you are, and be vulnerable. You know, because as long as we want to keep this face of, oh no, I'm good, I'm so pure, I would never do, I only work for the good in the world, I don't have a bad mind. You know, as long as we keep ourselves in that character, we are not really being honest with ourselves. So
I just I just wanted to say it's so much so that, you know, kind of religious taking on of a belief so extensively, where you're like, we just got to believe in hope that we achieve a specific result. And so like with the mother, the father, you know, I mean, the family is going through some pretty tough times and whatnot, but they're kind of just like, no, this is just what we got to do, da 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 da, instead of kind of, you know, calling a spade for what it is. Like, you know, we're facing really hard times here. This is, you know, this is the best approach we see forward here, but have like a general commentary dialogue of, you know, what the situation is, and not try to sugarcoat it one way. And at the same time, it's not to create a flip-flop and go, you know, make it extra bad, where, you know, you create your own kind of state of despair, if you will, on like, this is a tough situation, and go into the depression or whatever as like the depths of the negative about it. And I think that's really, you know, epitomizes the Desteni process, is that it's to get to seeing like the whole picture on a particular point in investigating words, especially that it's not to, you know, emphasize a charge more one way about a word or a thing, or the other way, and that, you know, both the charges will exist within as any given word, and it's just to, you know, equalize things so that, you know, you can put your best foot forward, and the water is settled so much so as you know, we can have like calm waters within ourselves by just being, you know, very self-honest with the actuality, like the facts of what are here, and not kind of gloss it this way or that way, because if we, you know, if we actually look at why we would taint the evidence that is here one way or the other way with a positive or negative, it's because of fear within ourselves, you know, and there's the various dynamics of that fear, where we think like, oh, you know, we victimize ourselves within the fear, and so then reacting and like wallowing in the depths of, you know, our own darkness, depression, like I'm stuck, I'm the victim, I can't get out, da da da, things are just all awful, or going the other way of like fearing, you know, this bad reality continuing to be bad, so making up this positive self-talk of like, oh no, it's all good, like da 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 da, when, you know, really the actuality of the situation within yourself is not all good, and to actually be vulnerable enough to acknowledge it, what it is for what it is, and then from there, you know, having the strength of character to say, you know, this is what I would like to create from here, but here's where I'm at, here's where we are at here, and we're gonna have to, do some things. Like, let's see what can be done that, could be positive.
Yeah, and positive in the sense of being constructive, it being something that we can live with, be sustainable with, honor our lives with, essentially. Because, one controversial part of the end of this movie, and also to kind of wrap up the discussion, is how some people deem that at the end, her signing up to be a witch and getting into this ecstasy and the coven and reunion of witches and all of that, that it's like, yeah, her salvation, her freedom. We don't really know, and I would definitely question that. But in all senses, it's to, if we take it into a practical example, when we believe that just seeking that happiness and ecstasy and joy and having all that you want in your life, that you equate it into, this is freedom, this is who I really am, which I would leave it as a point to kind of reflect on, not to say it is so or it isn't, but more to then kind of open up the question and say, what am I striving for? What am I making my life worthy of? What is my purpose? What are the values, the principles that I am including in my day-to-day living? Why am I here? What are my dreams? What are my desires? And there to investigate them. Because if we just can get, let's say, veered or influenced by an ad that we see on the streets, or by the life of this or that celebrity, or all kinds of fantasies, that's how we essentially also become mind controlled and do not have any power over ourselves, as in a directive principle. So rather, if anything, we can leave it up to everyone to continue investigating ourselves, not only the positively or the superficial aspects of what we see we do or don't do, but really dive into those things that we have been mostly fearing to look at. Those things that we kind of have, as you were mentioning, the resistance to look into, because, oh no, it's so ugly, I don't want to go there. Go there. If you want support, there's a DIP Lite course that it's free for everyone that wants to start kind of writing up themselves, their mind, getting to know themselves, because it is so that we have to know ourselves if we want to create any meaningful and constructive change. How about doing it through writing? That's the best way that we create a relationship with ourselves, and we then are able to share it and communicate better with others and change our lives in a way that we are deciding to do. It's not by God or a religion or a dogma or a faith. No, it's you being completely and fully aware of what you're making of your life as well.
Totally. And, to add to that, to really consider how you can create the life that it is, in fact, you do want. I mean, it really starts from understanding the points that you already got within you that you don't want. When you see these things that are there and you don't really like it, by understanding how that point exists within you, that will aid you in creating that which you do like, because that which you do like is, well, that might even change a little bit per se, or like your awareness, the depth of the relationship into what you like can expand by understanding the points that you don't like. So it's, in a way, you face that and you evolve in that process, in the sense of your understanding of yourself, the know thyself point there. So, let a point of support I can give and share that it's really helped me quite a lot is, using resistance as your life roadmap in so many ways, where, like for me in watching this movie, initially I was like, oh, this, I see kind of where this is going. I don't really care for it. It's not my preference movie. Shut it off. But no, it's kind of like, whoa, maybe there's a lot more here for me to get out of this movie, because I'm having, resistance towards it. And by allowing myself to explore that resistance, there's so many gifts that are available, presented to me. And I mean, who doesn't like gifts? I mean, everybody likes gifts. Even if you say you don't like gifts, somebody gives you a good gift that was a surprise you weren't expecting. That's pretty awesome. I mean, you know, especially because you didn't know what it was and it was so awesome and it was this gift. And so facing resistance within yourself and using that as a life roadmap is serendipitously awesome, because you'll uncover, you'll unturn so many great things for yourself that you had no idea you were going to give to yourself. And it starts just with, like, you know, daring to go there, so to speak, as like the point is already here. It's just, you know, not pushing it away, but allowing yourself to kind of, you know, swim into it like head on kind of thing, and not, you know, just it's there and you're over here and having a split within yourself. Because I mean, that's not very comfortable either. It's like we so much so, you know, create this false sense of comfort, like being comfortable within our own discomfort. And if we're really honest with ourselves, you know, that totally sucks. But it's like we've accepted these lesser versions of ourselves, and to actually create, you know, our greatness that we are and capable of is a daring to go there, is using resistance as a practical point of support. So
and that's what really means to become your own God, your own creator, and your own directive principle, and be self-governed and self-directed and stand in full sovereignty. That starts with our minds. That's all that I have to say.
Totally. Awesome. Marlon, it was a real pleasure sharing this hangout with you here today. I really do encourage you to keep in touch with me and tell me any more movies that you have, because every time you've been on for a movie hangout with me, it's been great. Lots of points have opened up, and I will extend that welcome to anyone and everyone out there to share their points about any movie they like, because I really have taken on this point that, you know, I'm open to watching whatever movie. In a way, there is no bad movies, because a bad movie is a good movie, as the flip side of the coin. And you know, when somebody, and it's almost more interesting to me when people say, oh, that movie was just so terrible. And this movie, The Witch, was a classic example of that. Like, I saw on Netflix, it got 1 star or 1.5 star. And so often, you know, we go to be like, well, I'm not going to bother with that, it got 1 star. And I think oftentimes there's so many more points to pull out of it that are unexpected when you dare yourself to you know, question why the rating on something was so low. And when a rating on something is so low, sometimes, like especially with a movie review, it's because it goes against the grain of what the commonly accepted pre-programmed script is, as just, you know, the limited definition of what is good and what is not good. So yeah, definitely implore one to investigate the movie rating system and yeah, share.
That's an awesome point. I didn't even know that it was on Netflix, but then more to our point, watch it, because I recommend it. Now that they watch the Hangout, they might get like the idea that, hey, let's watch it with this new perspective and look at it. But yeah, I watched it twice in the movies and I became quite a fan of it, but that's about it. It inspired me to do other projects as well, so that's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, that wraps it up for this week's Hangout. Again, please share with your friends, talk about it, and write to us, tell us what you'd like to see, talk about, and let's just keep the conversation keeping on. All right, everyone. Thanks again, Marlon.
Thanks, Mike.
All
Bye.
right. Cheers, everyone.